Members of the MBA class of 2014, family and friends, it's a real honor to be here. Harvard Business School is a place that transformed my life, that gave me friendships and experiences that I'm only now beginning to fully appreciate. I remember very well the day that I arrived here 13 years ago. I made my way into Spangler, and I think we were the first class that got full use of Spangler. And after confirming that I hadn't mistakenly entered into a five-star hotel, and that this indeed was the student center, I looked around at the neoclassical interior, sat on the beautiful leather couch near a stone fireplace, watched the well-shampooed squirrels outside frolicking, and thought to myself, yes, I think this place should do just fine. And I actually see Mr. Spangler's in the front row. Thank you very much. That was sitting next to my mother, no less. Then I began to meet my classmates, Navy SEALs, Olympic athletes, founders of significant organizations, speakers of 5 languages, brain surgeons, youngest X at company Y, international debate champions, Taiwanese pop stars, and I felt a bit insecure. Then the case discussion started. The professors were not lecturers, but these dynamic, well-dressed facilitators of conversations. Rather than passively taking in information, class really was about the students actively listening and communicating with each other, being comfortable speaking extemporaneously in front of 90 smart people on a daily basis. As a natural introvert, this was especially difficult for me. All of my fellow classmates seem unnaturally articulate and thoughtful. Even the Taiwanese pop star spoke English better than me. This is true. But slowly, I began to appreciate that we were all in the same boat, that each of us were comparing our own weaknesses to everyone else's strengths, that this experience was forcing us all out of our comfort zone in a very healthy way. Then 9/11 happened during the second week on campus. We weren't in New York, but many of our classmates had just come from there and felt helpless. Over the next few days, news began to trickle in. Some good, a classmate's father was able to get out. Some horrible. One of our classmates was the only surviving member of the firm she had just left a few weeks before. We were shocked like the rest of the world. All of a sudden, business or school or career or personal insecurities felt a lot less important. We were all just creatures in a world that we didn't quite understand, ones that lived a day-to-day normalcy, that all of a sudden realized how delicate they and their society might be. Personally, I couldn't have imagined a better place to be then. The normally scheduled cases were replaced with sometimes raw, sometimes charged discussions of recent events, but they stayed open and respectful. Observing my new classmates helped me appreciate that the world was going to be okay. They represented nearly every culture and community on the planet Earth, and they often disagreed, but they communicated. We were then moved into our permanent sections, Section D for me. I don't know if and began the traditional first-year experience, which is a fairly unique one even among business schools. Mandatory attendance, assigned seating, cold calls, a steady tempo of cases, breakfast with your cross-section study group, discussions every day with the same 90 students. Over the course of just the first year, this takes 90 complete strangers from all over the planet and literally turns them into a family. You learn to complete each other's thoughts, you challenge each other's biases, you celebrate each other's successes, you literally sing and dance and cry together. Through Skydecks, you laugh together and keep each other humble and grounded. And statistically, about 2 couples per section actually do become family and get married. Over the course of the first year, one of my section mates, Doug Schillinger, had a fairly serious diagnosis of cancer. And I saw our section rally around him like direct family, like real brothers and sisters. Even when his prognosis was not looking good, he decided that he would rather spend his days in section than anywhere else. In our section, we also had a Catholic priest, Father Tom Doyle. He became a counselor not just for the Catholics on campus, but for our entire class. And he was always there to give God's view on the best product strategy or HR decision in the case at hand. Very useful. He later performed the wedding services of a large number of our classmates, many of whom were not Catholic or even Christian, myself included. This is just a small sample of the types of connections formed with my classmates at HBS. And as we've heard from the previous speakers, it's not unique. This has happened for many of y'all over the last 2 years. In my current life, I'm asked a lot about the role of the physical classroom. When I reflect on the depth of the section experience at HBS, I realize that this is what all schooling, not just business schooling, should be about. Students disagreeing and challenging and conversing with each other, students being part of an incredibly diverse yet tight cohort, students learning from each other's experiences. And I think it goes beyond the classroom. As I try to grow Khan Academy, I reflect on how I can imbue the section, or how I can imbue the organization, with the best attributes of a section. How to create deep camaraderie along a broad diversity and skill and opinion and background. How to foster a culture in which people are not insecure about their own weaknesses or intimidated by other people's talent. How to create an organization with bold ambitions and high energy while staying humble and grounded through joy and laughter. Because of this, it doesn't take long to realize that the cases on accounting and strategy and operations were important, but they were really the pretext for something more powerful. HBS is a transformative experience because of your fellow classmates, because you're as good as the people you surround yourself with, and you probably will never be immersed with so many people who will push you to be better. And you need to be the best version of yourself, not just for your own satisfaction or success, but for the sake of the world as a whole. Some of you grew up in households that live below the poverty line, while others of you may be the third generation to attend this school. Regardless of your starting point, through a combination of luck, effort, and skill, you are now going to be a graduate of the Harvard Business School. You are being given an opportunity that only 1 in 100,000 humans receive. And through more luck, effort, and skill, you'll find yourselves in positions of surprising influence. What type of reality humanity ends up in isn't a flip of a coin. It isn't random. It will be dependent on the decisions that people like you make. And this is important because we're at a time of major change in our civilization. We're at the early stages of an inflection point that may be larger than those caused by the printing press or the Industrial Revolution. People are becoming connected in ways that were unimaginable even a generation ago. Access to information and knowledge and unthinkable computation power is becoming universal. Organizations that are impacting hundreds of millions or billions of people are coming to being in a matter of months or years rather than decades or generations. And for better or worse, centuries-old institutions and frameworks are being challenged, and this trend only seems to be accelerating. My personal belief is that this phase of history will rival the development of agriculture or writing in redefining the potential of the human species. With this in mind, I want to share a thought experiment that I often think about in the context of Khan Academy. As some of you know, we're a not-for-profit with the mission of providing a free, world-class education for anyone, anywhere. It started out as a way to remotely tutor my cousins in New Orleans while I was an analyst at a hedge fund here in Boston. It's now much larger than me. We're a team of 60-plus people with thousands of supporters and volunteers, and the effort now reaches over 10 million students every month. What really convinced me to quit my job, which I was quite happy with, was the notion that not just my great-grandchildren could learn from the Khan Academy, but maybe, just maybe, everyone's great-grandchildren could learn from the Khan Academy for free. My daydreams, which were pretty delusional when I was one guy operating out of a walk-in closet, centers around just what might happen if we can have billions more people reach their intellectual potential by appropriately using the technology at our disposal. To put this in focus, imagine going back to the year 1600. Even then, Western Europe was one of the more educated parts of the planet. But back then, about 20% of the population could read and write. And I suspect if you went back there and if you asked someone who was capable of reading and writing, say a member of the clergy, and you said, what percentage of the population is even capable of it? They might have said, if you have an incredible education system, maybe 50%. You fast forward 400 years to today, and we know that that prediction would have been wildly pessimistic, that nearly 100% of the population can be literate. But what similar blinders do we have on today? If I were to ask you what percentage of the population is capable of understanding quantum physics, or what percentage of the population is capable of contributing to medical research, you might say maybe 5 or 10%, or with a really good education system, maybe 15 or 20%. But what if the answer is 100%? What could that mean for the rate at which human society could progress? What would that mean for the human condition? But that is just one aspect of the types of blinders we have on today that in 400 years will hopefully seem silly. What blinders do we have on when we think of economics? Muhammad Yunus, one of my personal heroes, founder of Grameen Bank, questions whether poverty, something as fundamental as poverty, should be accepted as a given in a world of abundance. And he's lifted millions out of poverty, not through charity, but through the power of finance and banking. Elon Musk, founder of Tesla and SpaceX, questions why we need to be a vulnerable one-planet civilization, and he's doing something about it. What blinders do we have on when it comes to health, transportation, housing? And what happens when some of the most skilled, energetic, and empowered young people on the planet, i.e. you, decide to rip those blinders off? And in my mind, organizations are at their best when they keep track of this bigger picture, when they take into consideration a timescale longer than a year or decade or even a generation, much less the next quarter or bonus period, when they think and aspire on a scale larger than one's direct circle, firm, or country. There are many people in the world who dream big, but do not have the skills or energy or influence to make it happen. On the other hand, there's a smaller group of people with the skills and energy and influence, but either choose not to or are not capable of thinking beyond the relative near term. The world changes when the skill and energy and influence intersect with the desire to think bigger. And I want to be clear. I'm not asking any of you to do something drastic. In fact, I think most of you are doing the exact right thing. Build your skill set and experience and influence as a manager, as an investor, as an entrepreneur. These are all super critical roles in society, and done well can be incredibly meaningful and impactful. Instead, I'm asking that you approach your work with an eye towards the horizon, that you don't allow your capacity to dream to atrophy, that you don't let your desire to fit in keep you from questioning assumptions and ripping off blinders. Because in 10 or 15 years, and I can tell you that time will go by awfully fast, whatever track you take, you will be the ones defining culture. You will be defining how your industry does things. You will be in the position to take your business or industry or society to a completely new place. Whatever you choose to do, you will have the skills and experience to attract others to your cause. Regardless of whether you find yourself in technology, media, finance, healthcare, manufacturing, or government, try to surrender your individual ego and aspirations to something bigger than yourself. Think of the firm not as a tool to maximize profit, but profit as a byproduct of maximizing global well-being. Money not as a superficial scoreboard of success, but a command over resources to make the world a better place. Leaders don't assume the current reality is a given. They assume that it can be changed for the better, and they then bring people along to visualize and imagine and work towards this better reality with them. When you surrender yourself to an idea or principle bigger than yourself, regardless of the field, your soul will feel nourished and the universe will work in your favor. Give the people you work with and lead a greater purpose, and they will run through walls with you. I say all of this to you because most of us have spent most of our lives suppressing our daydreams, being told not to be too idealistic or to stop thinking our fantastical thoughts. But given where we are in history and the needs and opportunities of our society, coupled with the platform that you will have as a leader in your community, it's the opposite. We need you to believe in your daydreams. We need you to be idealistic. We all have to make ends meet. We all need to provide for our families and enjoy some small luxuries now and then. But remind yourselves that you are in the eye of the hurricane in one of the most important times in human history. Imagine living in Athens in the 5th century BCE and only being concerned about your crop yield. Imagine living in 15th or 16th century Florence and only worrying about the next transaction. Imagine living in Philadelphia in 1776 and only caring about your profit. In 1,000 years, people will romanticize about the time that we live in right now. The time when humanity went from being a fragmented, provincial, unconnected, sometimes petty, proto-civilization to being a multi-planetary, connected, sentient one. The time when the human species awakened. Your grandchildren, and based on what is likely to happen in medicine, your great-great-grandchildren as well, will ask you what it was like to be alive at the dawn of the awakening of our civilization and what you did to catalyze it. You have the chance to start defining that right now. Harvard Business School, class of 2014, you've been blessed with an opportunity that few among the billions of our fellow humans receive. Go make history. Thank you.